At my daughter's school fair, I overheard her telling a teacher that she had two daddies, her real daddy and uncle, who sleeps in mommy's room when daddy isn't home. I thought I was being clever when I started working late on Tuesdays. Sarah would put Emma to bed, thinking I was grinding at the office for our family's future. Instead, I was at Rebecca's apartment, telling myself it was just stress relief. Just something I deserved after 10 years of marriage, mortgage payments, and sleepless nights with a colicky baby who grew into a demanding toddler. The affair started innocently enough. Rebecca was the new marketing coordinator at my firm, fresh out of college with this energy that made me remember who I used to be before diapers and car payments consumed my life. She laughed at my jokes. She didn't roll her eyes when I talked about my ideas. She made me feel like I was still the man Sarah fell for, not the tired father I'd become. It was supposed to be temporary. A midlife thing that would burn out naturally. I convinced myself Sarah was better off not knowing. I was giving her plausible deniability while I worked through whatever crisis this was. I bought her flowers after my Tuesday nights with Rebecca. I played with Emma more on weekends. I thought I was managing both worlds perfectly. The first appeared when Emma started asking why I smelled different on Wednesday mornings. Kids notice everything, but I brushed it off. Rebecca wore this vanilla perfume that probably lingered on my clothes. I started keeping spare shirts in my car and telling myself that proved I was being responsible about this whole thing. Sarah never suspected. Why would she? We had a good marriage. We still had regular still told her I loved her every morning, and I meant it. Rebecca wasn't a replacement for Sarah, she was just this separate compartment of my life where I could be selfish for a few hours a week. The second was when Rebecca started talking about us having a real relationship. She knew I was married, knew about Emma, but she was 26 and optimistic in that way that makes you forget reality exists. She started leaving little gifts in my car. She'd text me photos of apartments she thought we'd like together. I should have ended it then, but the attention was intoxicating. I told Rebecca I'd leave Sarah after Emma's 5th birthday. It seemed far enough away to be meaningless, close enough to keep her happy. I had no intention of following through. I loved my family. I just also loved having someone who thought I was the center of their universe again. The third was when my brother Jake started coming around more often. He'd always been the better brother, the one who remembered birthdays and helped with Emma's crib assembly. But suddenly he was there every weekend, bringing coffee for Sarah, playing elaborate games with Emma that left her giggling for hours. I should have been grateful. Sarah deserved help, and Jake was giving her the support I was too distracted to provide. Instead, I felt territorial. Like he was moving into my space. But I couldn't say anything without revealing why I wasn't around to fill that role myself. The fourth was when Emma started calling Jake Uncle Daddy as a joke. Sarah thought it was adorable. Jake would scoop Emma up and pretend to be her superhero dad, complete with voices and sound effects. They had inside jokes I wasn't part of. They had routines that didn't include me. I told myself it was fine. Kids say weird things. Jake was just being a good uncle. I was being paranoid because guilt was making me see threats where none existed. The final, the one that shattered everything, was Father's Day weekend at Emma's school fair. I was supposed to work the ring toss booth with Sarah, but Rebecca had texted me that she needed to see me urgently. She'd found out I wasn't planning to leave Sarah, and she was to call my wife if I didn't show up to talk things through properly. So I told Sarah I had a work emergency. Another lie in the pile of lies that had become my life. She looked disappointed but not surprised. I'd been having a lot of work emergencies lately. I was at Rebecca's apartment, trying to calm her down and convince her to keep our secret, when I realized I'd left my phone on silent. When I finally checked it, I had 17 missed calls from Sarah. Jake had volunteered to help her at the school fair. Of course, he had. Saint Jake, stepping in to cover for his worthless brother again. I told Rebecca we'd talk later and raced to the school, preparing my work emergency story. I'd say the crisis was resolved, act disappointed that I'd missed most of the fair, and take Sarah and Emma out for ice cream to make up for it. I spotted them at the cakewalk, Sarah laughing at something Jake said, Emma on his shoulder, swearing a plastic crown from the prize booth. They looked like a family. A complete, happy family that didn't need me to function. That's when I heard it. Emma was talking to Mrs. Rodriguez, her kindergarten teacher, while Jake stood nearby organizing prize tickets. I was close enough to overhear but far enough away that they didn't notice me. I have two daddies, Emma was saying in that matter-of-fact way 5-year-olds deliver earth-shattering news. My real daddy, who goes to work a lot, and Uncle Jake, who sleeps in mommy's room when daddy isn't home. Mrs. Rodriguez looked confused. Sleeps in mommy's room? Yeah, when daddy has to work late, Uncle Jake stays over to keep us safe. He sleeps in the big bed with mommy so the monsters won't get us. I felt the world tilt sideways. Mrs. Rodriguez glanced at Jake, then at Sarah, then back at Emma. That's nice that your uncle takes care of you. He makes better pancakes than daddy, Emma continued. And he knows all the words to the Prince's songs. I stood there, frozen, as my 5-year-old daughter casually described how my brother had replaced me in my own home. While I was playing house with Rebecca, Jake was playing house with my family. Sarah appeared beside them, carrying a bag of cotton candy. Emma, sweetie, Don't talk Mrs. Rodriguez's ear off. I was just telling her about my two daddies, Emma said proudly. Sarah's face went white. She caught Mrs. Rodriguez's expression and started to stammer an explanation, but the damage was done. A teacher at my daughter's school now thought my family was some kind of complicated arrangement where my brother shared parenting duties and sleeping arrangements with my wife. Jake stepped in smoothly, the way he always did. Emma, remember we talked about how Uncle Jake is just visiting sometimes? I don't live with you guys. But Emma was 5 and literal and honest in the way that destroys lives. But you sleep in the big bed with mommy when daddy isn't home. That's what people who live together do. Mrs. Rodriguez excused herself awkwardly. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear. Jake looked guilty in a way that made my stomach drop. I walked away before they could see me. I sat in my car in the school parking lot, trying to process what I'd heard. My daughter thought she had 2 fathers because one of them was always absent, and the other one filled the void. She didn't understand why her uncle slept in her parents' bed because no one had explained to her that marriages sometimes have cracks that let other people slip through. The worst part wasn't that Jake might be sleeping with my wife. The worst part was that my daughter was confused about what a father was supposed to be because I'd never shown her. I drove home, canceled my next Tuesday meeting with Rebecca via text, and waited for Sarah to come back from the fair. When they walked through the door, Emma ran to me with her plastic crown and a bag of prizes. Daddy. You missed the best day ever. Uncle Jake won me a goldfish. Sarah avoided eye contact. Jake mumbled something about heading home and disappeared quickly. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and I had our first real conversation in months. How long? I asked. How long what? But she knew what I meant. How long has Jake been sleeping in our bed? She was quiet for so long, I thought she might not answer. Finally, since Christmas. You were working so many late nights, and Emma was having nightmares. Jake offered to stay over when you weren't here so she'd feel safe. And sleeping in our bed was necessary for Emma's nightmares? Another long pause. It started that way. We sat in our living room, surrounded by 10 years of shared life, and admitted that we'd both been looking for something the other one couldn't provide. I'd found a distraction. She'd found comfort. We'd both found ways to justify betraying the life we'd built together. The difference was that her betrayal was happening in our home, in our bed, with our daughter's knowledge and approval. Her betrayal was creating a new family structure, while mine was just creating lies. We agreed to try counseling. We agreed Jake would stop staying over. We agreed to be honest about what we both needed. I never told her about Rebecca. 3 weeks later, Rebecca called Sarah directly. The call came on a Thursday morning while I was getting Emma ready for school. Sarah's phone rang, and I heard her answer with her usual cheerful hello, followed by a long silence. Then I'm sorry, who is this? I was helping Emma find her library book, not paying attention until I heard Sarah say, he told you what about our marriage? My face turned to ice. I could only hear Sarah's side of the conversation, but it was enough. Tuesday nights. For how long? Vanilla perfume. Leaving me after Emma's birthday. Emma was chattering about something, completely oblivious to the fact that her world was being dismantled in real time. I kept braiding her hair, my hands shaking, while Rebecca systematically destroyed my life through the phone. Thank you for calling, Sarah said finally. I think I deserve to know. She hung up and stood there for a moment, still holding the phone. Emma skipped over to show her the drawing she'd made for show and tell. Mommy, look. It's our family. There's you and me and Daddy and Uncle Jake. Sarah stared at the drawing, 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. 2 tall figures, 1 shorter figure, and 1 tiny figure. A complete family that included my replacement. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Sarah said quietly. Go get your backpack. After I dropped Emma at school, I came home to find Sarah sitting at our kitchen table with a notepad covered in her handwriting. She'd always been a list maker when stressed. This list was titled Things I Need to Know, and it was 2 pages long. Rebecca is 26, she said without looking up. Marketing coordinator at your firm. Vanilla perfume. You've been sleeping with her every Tuesday for 8 months. You told her you'd leave me after Emma's 5th birthday. You told her our marriage was dead, but you were staying for financial reasons. I sat down across from her. Sarah. I'm not done. She turned the page. You gave her a key to your office. You took her to that conference in Denver last month. You told her I was frigid and that we hadn't had in over a year. That last one hit differently because it was the cruelest lie. Sarah and I had regularly. Good. I'd lied to Rebecca to make our affair feel justified, and now Sarah had to hear that I'd painted her as some sexless wife who drove me to cheat. She wanted to know if the things you told her about me were true, Sarah continued. She said she felt terrible about being involved with a married man, but you'd made it sound like we were divorced already. Emma's drawing was still on the table between us, 4 stick figures who would never hold hands again. She also told me that you love me, Sarah said, finally looking up. She said you talk about me constantly. About how guilty you feel. About how perfect I am. About how you don't deserve me. I waited for her to continue, but she was done. She'd laid out the facts of my betrayal with the same methodical approach she used for grocery lists and birthday party planning. "I need you to leave," she said. "Sarah, we can work through this. We agreed to try counseling. That was before I knew you were actively cheating on me while we were trying to save our marriage. That was before I found out you were planning to divorce me and just hadn't bothered to mention it." I tried to explain about Rebecca, about how it wasn't serious, about how I'd already ended it. But every word made it worse. Sarah sat there taking notes like she was documenting evidence for court, which I realized she probably was. "The apartment above the Hendersons' garage is available," she said. "Mrs. Henderson called this morning after you left. Rebecca also called her, asking about rental properties near Emma's school. She thought Rebecca was calling on behalf of us, that we were looking for a place for your brother. Even my escape route had been contaminated by my affair. Rebecca was still trying to insert herself into my life, still thinking we had a future together." "How long do I have?" I asked. "I want you gone by Sunday. Emma and I are going to stay with my sister this weekend, so you can pack without traumatizing her." "What are you going to tell her?" Sarah's composure finally cracked. "I don't know, David. What do you tell a 5-year-old whose father has been lying to her face for 8 months? What do you tell a little girl who thinks she has 2 daddies because one of them is never home and the other one is sleeping with her mother?" The truth hit me then, fully and brutally. Emma had been trying to make sense of our family's dysfunction by creating a narrative that included everyone she loved. She'd invented a version of family that worked because the real version was broke, and she didn't understand why. "Jake knows," Sarah said. "I called him after I talked to Rebecca. He's not coming around anymore. He said he's ashamed of what happened and he's sorry for making everything more complicated." So I was losing my breath, too. My daughter's second daddy was disappearing just like her first one had. I packed while they were gone that weekend. 10 years of marriage fit into boxes that I loaded into my truck like I was moving out of a college dorm. I left Emma's drawings on the refrigerator. I left the photos on the mantel. I left everything that looked like family behind. The apartment above the Hendersons' garage smelled like motor oil and old wood. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, a bathroom with a shower that barely worked. The window looked out over the backyard where Emma and I used to have tea parties. Sunday night, Sarah brought Emma home. I watched from my window as they unloaded grocery bags in Emma's weekend backpack. Emma looked up at my window and waved. She thought I was just visiting my new place, like when Uncle Jake visited theirs. Monday morning, Sarah called to establish the rules. I could see Emma on weekends. I could call her every day after school. I needed to be consistent because Emma was already asking when Daddy was coming home. "She thinks this is temporary," Sarah said. "She thinks you're staying at your new apartment because you're working on a special project." "What did you tell her about Jake?" "That Uncle Jake has his own family to take care of now." She asked if she had done something wrong to make her 2 daddies go away. I had to hang up the phone. Tuesday evening, Rebecca showed up at my apartment. She'd found out where I was living through some mutual connection and thought my separation meant we could finally be together openly. "I know calling Sarah was extreme," she said, "but you weren't being honest with either of us. Now we can start fresh." I looked at this 26-year-old woman who thought she'd liberated me from an unhappy marriage and wondered how I'd ever convinced myself she was worth losing everything for. She was pretty and young and enthusiastic, but she wasn't Sarah. She wasn't the mother of my child. She wasn't the woman who'd built a life with me brick by brick over 10 years. "There is no us," I told her. "There never was. You were a mistake." She left crying, and I felt nothing but exhausted relief. Wednesday after school, Emma called to tell me about her day. She'd made a new drawing for show and tell, 3 stick figures this time. When her teacher asked about the 4th figure from last week, Emma had said, "Uncle Jake moved away and Daddy moved away too, but Daddy still loves me." Thursday, the divorce papers arrived. Friday, Emma asked during our phone call if I was ever coming home. "I live in my new apartment now," I told her. "But why?" How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her father destroyed their family for 2 hours of attention every Tuesday night? How do you tell her that while she was learning to read and losing teeth and having nightmares, her daddy was busy pretending to be someone else's boyfriend? "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said. "Is that why Uncle Jake doesn't come over anymore either?" "Yes, sweetheart. That's why. Are you and Uncle Jake in trouble like when I hit Madison at school? Something like that. Will you say sorry, and then everything will be okay again?" I started crying right there on the phone with my daughter, and she heard it. "Daddy? Are you sad?" "Yes, baby. I'm very sad. Do you want me to come take care of you? I'm good at making people feel better." That broke me completely. My 5-year-old daughter was offering to comfort me after I'd shattered her family. She was still trying to take care of everyone, still trying to make the broken pieces fit back together. Saturday was my first weekend visitation. Emma packed a little suitcase with her pajamas and 3 stuffed animals. She was excited to see my new place, chattering about how we could have adventures and maybe I could teach her to cook pancakes like Uncle Jake used to do. We spent 2 days in my tiny apartment, playing board games and watching movies. She asked repeatedly when we were going home, not understanding that this was her new normal. Sunday evening, I had to drive her back to the house that used to be mine and watch her run to Sarah like she'd been rescued. Sarah and I exchanged Emma's backpack and schedule updates like divorced parents, because that's what we were becoming. "How is she doing?" I asked. "She's confused. She's sad. She keeps asking if you're sick, and that's why you can't live with us anymore." "And Jake?" "He sends her postcards from his business trips. She doesn't understand why he can't visit anymore, but she stopped asking." Standing on the porch of my former home, looking at the life I'd voluntarily exiled myself from, I understood for the first time what I'd done. I hadn't just cheated on my wife. I'd taught my daughter that love was unreliable, that families disappear without warning, that the people you count on most will eventually leave you. 3 weeks into my new life, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma's teacher. "Oh, hello, David. How are you adjusting?" I realized the whole school knew about our family's implosion. Emma's two daddies comment had probably been gossip for weeks. Everyone knew that the little girl in Mrs. Rodriguez's class came from a broken home where the father had moved out and the uncle had disappeared. "Fine," I lied. "Just fine." "Emma's such a resilient little girl," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "She told the class last week that sometimes families change shape, but love stays the same. Very wise for someone so young." I nodded and escaped to the checkout line, my throat tight with shame. Emma was explaining our family's destruction to her classmates with more grace than I'd shown through any of this. That night, I called Sarah. "I want to come home," I said. "That's not how this works, David. You don't get to destroy everything and then just decide you want it back." "I know. I miss her. I miss you. I miss our life." "Then you should have thought about that before you spent 8 months planning to leave us." The phone call ended, and I sat in my apartment that smelled like motor oil, eating dinner alone while my daughter and my wife had dinner together in the home I'd abandoned for vanilla perfume and Tuesday nights that meant nothing. 4 months later, the divorce was final. 2 years after I moved into the apartment above Henderson's garage, Emma was 7, and I was a weekend father living in a space that still smelled like motor oil and regret. I'd established a routine: pick her up Friday after school, return her Sunday evening, pretend that 48 hours every other week was enough time to be someone's dad. The custody arrangement was generous considering what I'd done. Sarah could have made it much worse. Instead, she was civil during our exchanges, efficient with scheduling, and unfailingly kind about my relationship with Emma. She never spoke badly about me in front of our daughter, never used Emma as a weapon. She just quietly rebuilt their life without me. Jake had moved across the country 6 months after everything fell apart. Sarah told me he'd taken a job in Seattle, that he sent Emma postcards and birthday presents, but had decided it was better for everyone if he stayed away. My brother, who'd been my daughter's second daddy, had exiled himself to protect what was left of our family. I'd tried dating a few times. Women I met through work or dating apps, careful to mention up front that I was divorced with a daughter. They'd nod and say they were fine with kids, but when they met Emma and saw how she clung to me during our limited time together, they'd realize what they were signing up for. A man who'd destroyed his family carried a particular kind of damage that made him unfit for new relationships. Rebecca had left town after that night at my apartment. She'd transferred to our company's branch office in Phoenix, sending me a brief email about needing a fresh start. I never replied. The Hendersons' garage became my world. I'd furnished it with second-hand furniture and photos of Emma. I kept her artwork on the refrigerator just like Sarah did at home. I read parenting books, trying to figure out how to maintain a relationship with a child who saw me 4 days a month. I went to therapy and talked about guilt until the words lost meaning. Emma never asked why I'd moved out anymore. She'd accepted that sometimes daddies live in different places but still love their little girls. She'd tell her friends at school that her parents were divorced, matter-of-factly, the way kids adapt to reality when adults shatter it around them. Sarah had started dating someone new. Emma mentioned him casually during our phone calls. Mom's friend Tom came to dinner or Tom helped me with my bicycle. I didn't ask for details, and Emma didn't offer them. She'd learned to navigate the complexity of adults and their relationships with the wisdom of someone who'd had stability taken away too early. The school play was announced in March. Emma's second grade class would perform a spring production about families around the world. Each child would present a different country and talk about family traditions. "I'm doing Ireland," Emma told me during our Friday dinner at the diner we'd claimed as our special place. "Mrs. Peterson said I can talk about how Irish families tell stories and have big celebrations." "That sounds perfect, sweetheart. Will you come watch my play?" The question was innocent, but it carried weight we both understood. School events were tricky territory. Sarah would be there. Tom would probably be there. I'd be the visiting father, the one who used to belong but now needed permission to attend his daughter's milestones. "Of course I'll be there," I said. "I wouldn't miss it. Mom said she'll save you a seat." The kindness in that gesture made my chest tight. Sarah didn't have to include me. She could have let me figure out my seating arrangements, marked me as separate from their life. Instead, she was still trying to make Emma's world feel cohesive despite the mess I'd created. The night of the play, I arrived at Emma's school and found Sarah in the auditorium. She'd saved me, and I'll seat 2 rows from the front, right where I'd have a clear view of the stage. Tom was there too, sitting next to Sarah, looking like he belonged in ways I no longer did. David, Sarah greeted me with the polite warmth she'd perfected over 2 years of co-parenting. Emma's so excited you're here. Tom nodded and shook my hand. He was probably 40, tall and kind-looking, the type of man who remembered to bring flowers to school plays and help with homework without being asked. The type of man I could have been if I'd paid attention to what mattered. The lights dimmed, and 27 second graders filed onto the stage in costumes representing families from around the world. Emma appeared in a green dress Sarah had made, holding a small Irish flag, her red hair in braids that reminded me painfully of myself. She spoke clearly into the microphone about Irish families and their traditions of storytelling. She talked about how Irish parents pass down tales of magic and adventure, how families gather to share music and laughter, and how love travels across oceans and through generations. In Ireland, Emma said, families believe that love is stronger than distance. Even when people are far away, they're still connected by invisible threads that nothing can break. I realized she was looking directly at me when she said it. After her presentation, she stayed on stage with her classmates for the group song. I watched my daughter sing about families and love and belonging while sitting next to the man who was becoming her new father figure. Tom applauded enthusiastically. Sarah wiped her eyes. I sat frozen, understanding finally and completely what I'd lost. During the reception afterward, Emma ran to me first. "Did you see me, Daddy? Did I do good?" "You were perfect," I told her, lifting her for a hug that felt too brief. "I'm so proud of you." She whispered in my ear, "I picked Ireland because you told me that's where our family came from. I wanted you to feel included." My 7-year-old daughter was still trying to take care of me, still working to make broken pieces fit together. Sarah approached with Tom, and Emma climbed down to show him her costume. "Tom, did you see my flag? Daddy's family came from Ireland, so now it's my family too." "That's wonderful, Emma," Tom said. "You taught me something new tonight." I watched Tom crouch down to Emma's level, genuinely interested in what she was saying. He asked thoughtful questions about her research. He complimented her dress. He was present in a way I'd never learned to be. Other parents came over to congratulate Emma, and I found myself standing slightly apart from the family group. I belonged enough to be included but not enough to be central. I was the weekend father, the one who got mentioned but didn't quite fit. Mrs. Peterson, Emma's teacher, joined our group. Emma did such a lovely job. She was so excited that both her parents could be here tonight. The phrase hung in the air awkwardly. Mrs. Peterson didn't know how to categorize Tom, and Emma hadn't clarified the family structure. Were Sarah and I the parents, with Tom as an add-on? Was Tom a new parent figure while I remained the biological father? Were we some modern blended family that defied easy definition? Emma solved it with the brutal honesty of childhood. "This is my mommy and my daddy," she said, pointing to Sarah and me. "And this is Tom, who lives with us and helps take care of me." The adults exchanged glances over Emma's head. Tom looked slightly uncomfortable being defined as a caretaker rather than a family member. Sarah looked sad for him. I felt the familiar guilt that came with knowing my absence had created space for someone else to step into my role. Later, as we were leaving, Emma hugged me goodbye with the desperate grip of someone who knew she wouldn't see me again for several days. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. Are you proud of me?" "Every single day." She climbed into Sarah's car, where Tom was already waiting in the passenger seat. They looked like a family, mom, dad, and daughter. I looked like a visitor who'd been allowed to attend their child's school play. I drove back to my apartment and sat in the parking space behind Henderson's garage, watching the light in Emma's bedroom window across town. The invisible thread she'd talked about during her presentation felt very thin that night. 6 months later, Sarah called to tell me she and Tom were engaged. "I wanted you to hear it from me before Emma mentioned it," she said. "We're not planning anything elaborate. Just a small ceremony next spring." "Is Emma okay with it?" "She's excited. She likes Tom. He's good to her." "And after the wedding?" "Nothing changes with custody. Emma will still be your daughter. Tom knows that. But everything would change. Emma would have a stepfather who lived with her full time, who helped with homework and made breakfast, and tucked her in every night. She'd have a stable, 2-parent household again, just not with her original parents." "David?" Sarah's voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" No, I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay since the day I heard my daughter explain to her teacher that she had 2 daddies. I probably wouldn't be okay again. But Sarah didn't need to carry that burden anymore. "I'm happy for you," I said, and meant it. "You deserve to be loved well." A year later, I watched from the back of a small chapel as my ex-wife married a good man who would raise my daughter with the attention and presence I'd failed to provide. Emma was the flower girl, radiant in a white dress, scattering petals with the joy of a child who'd learned that sometimes broken families can rebuild themselves into something beautiful. Tom's vows included a promise to be a faithful father to Emma. Sarah's vows included gratitude for second chances. Emma's smile included everyone in the chapel, even me. During the reception, Emma found me standing near the back wall, watching the celebration from the margins. "Are you sad, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart. I'm happy for Mommy and Tom." "But you look sad." I knelt so we were eye level. "Sometimes people feel sad and happy at the same time. I'm sad because I miss being part of your everyday life, but I'm happy because you have people who love you and take good care of you." She considered this with the seriousness she'd inherited from Sarah. "Tom said he's not trying to replace you. He said you'll always be my real daddy, but now I have two people who want to be my daddy." There it was again. Two daddies. But this time it wasn't confusion born from abandonment and an affair. This time, it was an abundance born from adults who'd figured out how to prioritize a child's well-being over their egos. "That makes you pretty lucky," I told her. "I know," she said, and danced back to the celebration. I left the reception early, driving home to my apartment that still smelled like motor oil and still held only weekend memories of fatherhood. I'd gained clarity that night, watching my replacement earn his place in my daughter's life through consistency and care. Tom would teach Emma to drive. He'd walk her down the aisle at her wedding. He'd be the grandfather her children knew and loved. He'd earn those roles by showing up every day, by being present and engaged and reliable. I'd remain the weekend father, the one she called when she needed advice about boys or college or career choices. The one she loved but didn't depend on. The one who'd taught her that love exists even when trust is broken, but also that love alone isn't enough if you don't know how to show up for it. 5 years later, Emma was 12, and I'd moved to a better apartment across town. She still came for weekend visits, still called me every few days, and included me in the important moments of her life. But she'd grown up in Tom's house, with Tom's steady presence, learning what reliable love looked like. The last time we talked about the early years, she mentioned her two daddies period with the detached curiosity of someone examining ancient history. "I used to be so confused about our family," she said. "I thought every kid had a daddy who lived somewhere else and an uncle who helped their mom. I didn't understand why my friends only had one dad each." "Do you remember being upset about it?" "Not really. I just remember wanting everyone to be happy and not understanding why the grown-ups were so sad all the time. That was my legacy, a daughter who'd spent her early childhood trying to manage emotions and make sense of allures. A daughter who'd learned to adapt to broken systems instead of expecting stability." She was thriving now, on her role A, ND soccer T, and a friend group that included her in their sleepovers and birthday parties. She was becoming the kind of young woman who'd choose partners wisely and build relationships carefully, partly because she'd seen what happened when adults were careless with love. Last month, she asked me why I'd moved out when she was little. I'd been dreading this conversation for 7 years, rehearsing different ways to explain infidelity to a child who deserved honesty but not trauma. "I made some very bad choices," I told her. "I wasn't being a good husband to your mother or a good father to you. Instead of trying to fix what was wrong, I made everything worse." "Were you having an affair?" The question was clinical, matter of fact. She was 12, not 5. She understood relationships and their failures. "Yes." "Did Mom know?" "Not until someone told her." "Is that why Uncle Jake stopped coming around, too?" "Uncle Jake and your mother made some mistakes as well. Everyone was trying to deal with problems in the wrong ways." She nodded, processing this information like she'd processed every other difficult truth in her young life. "Are you sorry?" "Every single day." "Do you think things would be different if you hadn't made those choices?" This was the question that haunted my sleepless nights. Would Sarah and I have found our way back to each other if I hadn't burned everything down? Would Emma have grown up in an intact family if I'd been brave enough to address my problems instead of hiding from them? "I think our family would look different," I said carefully. "But I can't know if it would be better or worse. What I do know is that you ended up with more people who love you."